God save ye, humble listeners. I am your queen. I hadn't had a female name prepared because the last game I had I was a man. So I am your queen, Amenhotep, and I'm following a weird wiggly ghost man. Oh, and this is my horse.
I'm on a horse.
You are a horse. Yes, this is a very arty little indie game that I figured we might play in contrast to the guns and violence and horrors of war that we were doing in the last couple episodes. And this is a game I found a long time ago. This is another Epic Games find for me. But I started playing it recently because I thought to myself, I'm not sure it'll work terribly well for this because I remembered it being harder than it was. And then I played it again just out of curiosity, and I found that it's a lot more engaging than I remember. So as you see, we started in the woods as some queen woman on a horse. Found this little degraded campfire and some poor people. So
we are their benevolent benefactor.
We came to them and put them to work, and they're going to thank us for it. But yes, we set up this little... we've gotten far ahead of ourselves. This is called Kingdom New Lands. And it's, as you can see, little indie pixel game. The first thing that struck me about it is just how pretty it is. I quite for a pixelated indie type game like this, not to say, I mean, indie game's not the right way to say it. For a pixelated game, pixel art game, this is pretty. Like the water effects, the way it scrolls, the reflections and all that. Yeah, it's very pretty. And I thought perhaps a bit of peaceful, contemplative time after the mindless action we've been having. So basically, we're this random queen character. We show up in the woods. We find this little settlement, and our goal is to build this place up, protect our growing community, and eventually we'll see what the rest of it may entail. But our first day is almost done here, and I could use a little more cash because this game, as I said, I thought it was more difficult than it is. That doesn't mean it's not strictly difficult. And the first thing I'm going to do with the few pennies I have to rub together is put up some minor fortifications for my little builder man. Because basically, this is very much... I'm going to extend as far as we can. Oh, I can't yet. I have to clear the forest first. But you...
Almost like a build-your-own-adventure thus far.
Well, it's actually... Funnily enough, I'm going to show off some of my indie game cred. But there was a browser game, long time ago, called A Dark Room, and it was sort of an artistic reinterpretation of the clicker game genre of all things. Are you familiar with clicker games? The literal, like, they were kind of portrayed as being the kind of games you could have on the background, like if you're trying to do something else, if you're in a meeting, or if you're at school, you can have like these on, because literally all you did was literally you click on various buttons. I need help. This happens at nighttime. It's somewhat similar to Minecraft.
I was actually going to make that comparison, but then when you started talking about the water reflection, I went, it's a little
it's closer to Terraria in that sense. It's 2D. I suppose I could bribe this guy to go away, but I don't really want to. So this is, of course, he probably won't get through that in nighttime. The course of the game is you try to do stuff during the day, because at night these weird sort of goblin, demon, whatevers, I'm not sure what they are, come out and they'll attack, and they only get stronger as time goes on, so you have to be making sure you're making constant progress is basically the thrust of it. And hopefully this guy won't break through this barricade. Oh, there he goes, before morning. So he's off, and now my little craftsman's going to come fix my stuff, and what I need is some cash right about now, so I need to recruit some more people. If I happen to know from experience that if you peruse the woods, you'll find stuff in the woods. So, for example, this is actually... Let me show on my map. I've played this for a little bit. Normally, you start in this initial world here. And then the goal, as you can see, perhaps, in the first world, is you restore this ship and sail to a new country, hence Kingdom New Lands. Huh. So I started here, and I went to here, and then I played the game there, and it's similar, the same concept. The ship gets wrecked when we arrive. We have to rebuild it, but there's more there's more development you can do. Like this one, it's a lot simpler, whereas you can find more stuff in the woods than this that'll give you greater stuff to explore. And then I moved to here, and I'm doing it again, and So technically this is not the raw game. Normally what you do... Oh, here's some people, but I don't have money. Normally what you do in this is when you arrive, you have the people you brought from your last world, so starting out isn't so difficult. And that's part of the reason I struggle with it, is because if you don't have that, if you lose on your first attempt, then you just have to start fresh, and the worlds generally are more difficult. But here, I happen to know that these kinds of things you find. It's a chest of gold in the woods, which will help us on the beginning. But anyways, an arty, indie, fun times sort of experience. Oh, but what I was talking about was a dark room. So it was a clicker game where you just clicked on stuff, but it was very story heavy. Like, you would click on things, and what the things did was, like, you started out and you were in a dark room. That's how it starts. You kindle a fire. You click on a button which kindles the fire. You do that. You can watch the button as the little meter of the button fills down, or goes down. The room gets colder. You click on it again, and it gets warmer. And then eventually, just sort of story starts happening. A person comes in. You'll end up finding, you start building houses and settlements and stuff in the woods, which happens to be where you're in a cave initially. You go out into the woods, and it's very similar to this thematically, where you build, you start by building the basics of a little town. As more people come, it's like you build houses, and then that brings more people in, and then you build more houses. You start giving them jobs to do, like I'm giving these people. Hopefully the people I recruited will be here before night falls, because they will probably get attacked by little goblins if they don't. But yeah, that's basically the plot, is you set up little cities, but the difference between this and a dark room is that had no visuals. It was literally a clicker game, so all of it was conveyed via text. So it was very similar.
So it's a little bit
very
like
similar to the text
You
adventure.
Cannot get ye flax.
Yeah, it was definitely like that, but I thought the story was still enjoyable. This I like because it's the same concept, but with pretty art to look at. The only thing I don't like as much is that you're expected to leave every world, so you don't develop it. You only develop it as much as you need to. You don't actually get to stay and make it as thriving.
Are you
as
sure
I'd
you
like.
can't double back once you've gotten further? I mean,
you can't, because anytime you go back to the thing, all you can do is select new game whenever you go to the map screen, which I showed you. She's running, which means people are on their way. But hopefully, you got to get behind the walls. I can use my money to distract. I can drop it, and that'll distract these little goblin creatures. But the problem with that is, in the early game, it makes sense because you might not have great defenses, and there's only usually a handful at a time. I'm going to give these guys, I'm going to pay my money to give some bows. So now I have some archers, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to defend. So I like it as a very basic, city building game from back in the day. But it's
like an early civilization.
Yeah, but it's a little more charming, I think, because the art's very simplistic. It's very fantastical, sort of medieval. So normally you'll see this. It's very easy to defend in the early game, but they just keep getting stronger, so you got to make sure you're leveling stuff up. The most important thing I find in the early game is to get recruiting of people, and that can be difficult. This is somewhat. It's not quite a roguelike. It's probably more of a roguelite, if I had to say, which is every time you move to a new world, that world has been unlocked. Right. Which means if you die, you can start at the new world instead of the first world. But every time you die, you do still have to start over.
Right.
And so that was part of the reason I found it a little difficult. And it also means that the world is randomly generated. So this island is different, which means, for example, these guys, this little camp of people is kind of far away. And I'm not sure that they'll get back in time before the night falls. Because if they don't, they'll get attacked and they'll be robbed of their money and they'll just come back to this camp. And this thing we passed here, this little archy, stony way, is where these monsters come from, and those get closer in every world too. So you'll notice I didn't have to go that far to get to this thing. And I'm not sure my guys will get back in time. But anyways, I figured a bit of a chance to discuss some lighter topics, some less heady things. A bit of calm, a bit of peacefulness after our fighting and war. Because you cannot have the rough without the smooth to balance it out. So, thought we'd. Look at you! Sounds like a
Skippy's commercial.
She's doing great. She got me a whole bunch of money. I'm actually going to use that to chop down these trees and expand my borders. So basically,
I thought maybe Treebeard was taxing you.
So yeah, it's just you push your borders out. That means your archers can go further and hunt more. Eventually, you'll start to be able to farm. once you level up your civilization enough. Thank you for that. So yeah, it's just a very charming little thing, and I'm getting lots of money. And I thought perhaps, since I showed off a bit of my indie cred to those in the know, but I figured we've done a fair few games, and it's probably been a little obvious to people who might know a thing or two about games. They might be able to see through our facades a little. I think
of what?
I think in some of the things we've done and talked about, we may have revealed ourselves to be not quite as knowledgeable in the world of games as we might pretend to be. We'll get into it, but I figured before anyone calls us out on it, we'll haul out the washing line and air our dirty laundry. So yes,
sure.
a chance to discuss sort of our gaming histories, as it were. Because as we said, things like the Halo video and Assassin's Creed, those are games that we've played and sort of were part of our, I guess you could call it gaming development, in the same way you could have sort of film development or reading development, whenever you begin to appreciate an art form.
Yeah.
But I figured we might take the chance to just sort of give a little bit of ethos, as it were, discussing what it is, we know about games, where we started with games, and perhaps explain to people why we might be worth listening to, because some of them might not consider us that. But anyways, you care to go first, or
sure? I mean,
we have to think for a little bit, because I had to think a bit when I thought, oh, they just made it. Welcome, people. I don't know what to call you. I was going to call them homeless, but they're not homeless anymore. They found a home with me. I am your despot. Because I did. I basically just wander out in the forest, I bribe people to come back to my kingdom, and then I force them to do things for me. Ooh, but good work. Fighting off the evil. It's very good of you.
That's good work right there. Right, I don't know that it would take me a long time, only because I don't know that I would feel the need to defend any sort of.
I'm teasing to a degree.
Yeah, I just think. I mean, really, what more is any commentator or I guess perspective of,
I suppose I should put you guys to work.
Opinionated, person as far as video games goes than just other gamers. I mean,
well, yeah,
and so
that's precisely what I'm trying to establish ourselves as having any degree of gaming cred.
Sure,
because
I mean,
after we've shown that we struggle at certain things, so some people might be wondering.
Well, I mean, I think I was early on. No. I didn't. Well, I mean, my experiences were primarily on Nintendo, and I would say it's all
our era.
I mean, that's fairly common thing, but I mean, you have your basic just platformer games with Mario and stuff like that. I actually, oddly enough, had a little bit of an affinity for Kirby. I know that's a little bit more of a...
Well, that was the handhelds almost exclusively, weren't they?
Yeah, but Kirby was its own thing, definitely. I mean, it was not... I was into the handhelds with Kirby right before then the whole Pokemon, cartridges came on the scene with the various...
So you were into Kirby before even Pokemon was a thing. That just dates you, doesn't it?
It does. But as
I said, dirty laundry.
The old school Game Boys back when, and some of y'all will remember this, back when there was no backlit screen and you had one of those little...
I do remember those little...
One of those little
telescoping
special
plug-in
snakes.
They made it like a crazy straw just because it was for kids. I remember those.
And but then there was the Advance, obviously, then had or the Color, I suppose, had actual color in it, and then that's the one that I held on to for the longest time. I
had mine until I lost it.
Yeah, well, that's a common.
Seems
common
like that would happen
for everybody. But yeah, then I think I went through a season where I really didn't play a lot outside of just at various people's houses. The early Xbox One, the first Xbox, I was not really a part of that particular era. I think that was part of when that kind of lapsed for me.
Really?
Well, it's not that I wasn't an Xbox person. It's that I didn't ever play it at my own house because there was a part of it where
Did you even have one at your own house?
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
I didn't have one. However, I played quite a bit when I was at other people's houses.
Well, that's pretty. That's a pretty common for people who are starting. Is you mostly play at other people's houses.
But then I would say where my gaming really took off probably was in my early college years when I started playing on PC.
Well, and that's around the time we started playing stuff together, too.
Correct. So, and it was my first exposure to one of my, like, the games that I found to be the most compelling was Assassin's Creed. And so, and well, obviously we've gotten into that briefly in our first video, but...
I wouldn't call our discussion there brief. We beat the Assassin's Creed horse till it started making strange noises.
Put the stick down, the horse is dead.
So these people don't have any money. You went out hunting all day and you don't have money for me.
Wow,
you're
giving them a hard time?
Well, as I said, we are the despotic ruler.
They're despondent. Just walk away.
Well, especially because when you think about it, they don't get to keep any of the money they make from their hunting. They just give it to me. This is the ultimate communist manifesto game. They give me their money and I defend them except when I fail.
But I think...
okay, come on, you gotta start
that
hitting
game
stuff.
to me was what really propelled me into actually getting and pursuing gaming myself. So at that point,
that wasn't directed at you. That was directed at their horrendous ability to.
You weren't scoffing at my gaming.
Assassin's Creed.
No, but then I actually then started going back and playing things from the original Xbox that I really appreciated. So we went back and actually ended up finding a pretty high appreciation for Medal of Honor. As much as everybody likes the Call of Duty series, I don't know that I prefer it over to the Medal of Honor series. I actually think that the Medal of Honor series...
Now, would you qualify that?
Only,
do you think that's in a genuinely objective, or is that just nostalgia talking?
Ooh, it's not nostalgia. I would
money
say...
for me.
I don't know that anyone can argue objectivity in that.
Well, you got a point there.
But at the same time, I think Medal of Honor had a better handle on maybe if you can say this without straining the argument too far, that it had a better grasp on the historicity of things on certain things.
Well, it certainly held out longer before it jumped to the modern day.
Well,
because Medal of Honor got there, but oh boy, it took a lot longer than Call of Duty and Battlefield did.
Right.
They jumped pretty quickly to the Modern Warfares, and I forget what Battlefield called itself.
Well, and even the Modern Warfares didn't bother me that much. I think it was more like and now we're going to have zombies, and now we're going to... And I was like, okay,
well, and the plot started to get a lot more convoluted, whereas Medal of Honor, admittedly, I don't think we've played even half of all of them, because there's so many of them, but...
Yeah, there's quite a few.
But all the ones we played, they managed to keep... They were still... can you believe this? They were still themed around World War II.
Yeah.
Because Call of Duty gave up on that after 3, so...
So I think that there was that after that, and actually owning my own consoles, and obviously we started then playing together at a fairly young age. I mean,
although I don't think I mean I'll get into this when I talk about mine, but I don't think even when we started hanging together, I don't know that we were quite as appreciative of gaming in a cultured sense. I think it was more just we hung out. Play games.
Yeah, it was something the way we did. Yeah, exactly. No, but I think as I got into it, I found not only was there a enjoyable, notion of just playing the games, but there was also
there's the artistry.
Well, artistry,
there's
but I think being able
it.
To actually say, yeah, I appreciate this game and here's why, and it's a little bit like, again, being a movie buff or a book or
because
even a
we're
history
those kind of people where we whenever we're interested in something, we kind of get a little absorbed in it, and we like to really dive deep.
Yeah.
We're sort of the connoisseurs, as it were. Again, sounding pretentious, because it's what we do.
Well, yeah, but, welcome to the channel. But, I ended up owning, all the way through right now, at this point, currently I own all Xbox stuff. Now, I will say this. So, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but that's
a big debate we could open in
it's worth mentioning,
in the heart of gaming.
Because I was about to say this, is that I actually, I want to say, in that hiatus period where I wasn't really playing anything at my own house, I fell in love with...
You were a moocher, you mean?
I fell in love with Kingdom Hearts. I love it.
You're one of those people.
I loved the game because of...
I don't think we can be friends anymore.
Wow. Because of the fact that at the time, I thought it was cool that not only are you playing alongside Disney characters, that was neat, but then it had a bit of
Ooh, see, the crowds are getting bigger and these people aren't
doing their jobs.
I mean, well, because their hits are always random, so like sometimes they'll wipe out a massive crew and then sometimes they'll like never hit anyone. You're like, tonight they just did good, but they don't always do good.
Earned your keep.
Yeah, you get to eat tonight.
But I ended up. I loved the.
Oh, even better. They were
kind
cleared out before I got here.
Heroic side of obviously the Keyblade and all that kind of battle and that kind of thing. So that exclusively for a time was on the PS, and so I really actually appreciated PS system, and also one of the games that if we ever ended up touching this game, I think would be worthwhile.
Touching this game
would be
sounds inappropriate.
Would be the I believe it was back when Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, which you can
Spider-Man
take or
2?
leave.
GameCube? Or
it wasn't GameCube. It was. I want to say
I know
it was.
There was. Are you sure it wasn't? I don't know.
There
if it
may
was
have
exclusive
been
to GameCube.
Yeah,
I
there
played
may
it
have
on
been
GameCube.
one on GameCube. But
Spider-Man 2 is famous for being one of the best Spider-Man games.
Oh, I think it's fantastic.
Until recently, actually, they've made. It was a big deal. They made because I watch Zero Punctuation a lot.
Yeah.
Which you can probably tell if you know anything about the format of our show and Yahtzee's old Let's Play series he used to do. But, he comments a lot that's really up until the most recent Sony Spider-Man game that came out, I think, like 2 years ago. It's like Spider-Man 2, and then like a million Spider-Man games that were all crap.
Yeah.
And then the most recent one, hey, money.
But I think it was because the mechanics of the game worked really well.
I built a farm, and I'm going to put the new people to work on it.
The mechanics of the game worked really well, but then the actual story of the game was fantastic too. So that actually gave me some appreciation for the PS side of things. But I still...
Well, the other thing that gave me appreciation for that was Bounty Hunter, Django Fett.
Oh, you're not wrong.
That was a PS exclusive.
See, we have a lot more history than we... Because I played that with your cousins, actually.
I also played it with my cousin.
It's a fantastic game, I think.
Yes, indeed.
That one, I don't know that...
I'm going to have to level up, and it's going to cost me...
I don't know that I can say this with any sort of confidence, but I feel as though it flew a little under the radar.
I don't think so. I think people who were into gaming at that time would have known it. It was a PS exclusive, so of course it was...
Well, there you go. That was therein lies the divide.
Yeah, if you talk to PS gamers from that era, they no doubt will know about it. But it's kind of, I don't know, it's a little like Halo used to be when it was an Xbox exclusive, where that was just if you were an Xbox person, then those were the games you played. If you were a PS person, then you had your own games.
So anyway, that's kind of a brief summation. I mean, there's probably things in between that I have picked up along the way. Love the BioShock series, various series throughout. But honestly, So
you were a Kingdom Hearts mutant, hey?
What do you have against Kingdom Hearts? You gotta qualify that statement.
The plot is convoluted as.
Well,
it makes not a lick of sense.
It's convoluted. Only did you start in like one of the beginning game?
Don't try to argue, because I know for a fact gay people who like the game even admit it's convoluted, because it is.
I don't.
It's. I mean, as any Japanese RPG would be. Oh, the Final Fantasies are equally convoluted.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you played any sort of Final Fantasy, then it's equally.
Well,
similar.
Sure, but that's not a great bar for convoluted.
Well, but they're popular games for a reason.
You gotta get behind the walls. The monsters are coming. You fool! Get behind the walls. Retreat! Retreat to the second level. Oh, you just about barely made it out with your life. Oh, this is a big horde. I don't think we're gonna make it. We're not gonna make it, dude. I don't have any money to bribe them. All right. Well, This is the problem with this game. Is sometimes it's because it's random. Sometimes you'll just get a nasty horde and they'll wipe everybody out. Now, at least they're not killing too many of my people. And I say they don't kill them, they just turn them into the beggars that you hire at the beginning. Okay, they killed all the archers so they can't fight them off. Darn it, I'm out of money. Oh, thank heavens. Okay, it's daytime, you should leave. Okay. If they hit you, they'll knock off your crown and... Then if they manage to grab it, if they manage to grab the crown, then the game's over. So the game might end before it even begins. Freaking. See, sometimes it's like, what, day 5? Sometimes it takes till like day 10 before you get a horde big enough to break through the walls. That's one thing I don't like about this game. It's just the randomness makes it very unpredictable. And I was out of money for all of that, which means I'm not going to be able to hire new archers. So this is why I've had mixed feelings about it. I still think it has enough charm to push me on. Oh, we got one beggar. Sadly, I don't have any money, so he's just going to leave. But there's definitely some qualifying things. And you guys got money? I think there's only normally 2 chests in a map, so I don't think I'm going to be able to get easy money. I'm going to have to wait for the hunters. But as far as my history is somewhat similar. I also had a Nintendo, an NES specifically as a kid. I feel like we've had that thing for almost my whole life. I don't remember when we got it. So I was probably either very young or we had it when I was born, which there you go. You have a minimum limit on my age. But we had that growing up, and that was definitely in an age for me when games were like just a mind sink. You just sort of you played them because they were bright flashing lights.
Yeah. And
that was kind of it. I do remember when we got an N64. I don't know how old. I was fairly young. That was when we got the N64, and that I remember being slightly more serious about it. Not that it was still kind of a thing where it's like it was what you did when you were done with homework just to kill time. I don't know that I engaged with the games very deeply. I don't think there's going to be any chests for me to find, because sometimes there's 3, but sometimes there's not. So if we don't have it, I'm going to be a little bit hosed. But yeah, that was it. And we had the Nintendo, and we had things like, ooh, lucky us. Yes, because we had a Nintendo, but also we got a chest. So we had things like the Donkey Kong 64, Mario 64.
Oh, and I mentioned those, obviously, yeah. A
lot of the classics of that era. And I think I engaged more with games then because those, as we said in one of our other videos, I was much more of a story focused.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, to me, I don't know, maybe because it was almost always available in my conscious game playing, but 3D really helps to me to sell the immersion. Because you can really feel like, for some reason, not that the graphics were all that much better, because really they weren't, but for some reason I just felt like you could sort of feel more immersed in the world. So like I remember, I got really far for how young I was. I was surprised. I got really far through Banjo-Kazooie was a big one we had. I remember when my sister beat Donkey Kong for the first time, because that was like a huge deal in our family, because we'd been playing that like collectively forever.
Yeah.
I would recruit you people, but I think the monsters are on their way, so I'll leave you to him. Oh, he's joined his friends. He wandered all the way back. That kind of annoys me. So when they get robbed, they don't stick around, because you'd think, they go back to their little shacks in the woods. You'd think they'd want to stick around walls and other people. Oh boy. Oh, I thought she was firing at people, because I definitely need to get our archers back in commission. So that was sort of the first step for me. I'm going to have to give all of you guys... Oh, hang on. How many of you are there? Because I need some of you to be my anchor hammer people. So that was sort of that. I still was games... Oh, okay. Okay, that wall didn't get rebuilt, which means I need more hammer guys. I don't know that I really appreciated games much in that era either. But I started to. But it wasn't until... the big thing for me was when we got... I still got 2 guys around. There's hammers over there. Go get them. We got an Xbox, and I think that was the first console that was mine.
Yeah.
Because back when I was a kid, it was just, the console was the family console. But as I asked for it because I was starting to get more into gaming at that time, and I specifically remember, we didn't actually cover this. I intended to when we did the Halo 3 video, but Halo 3 was actually one of the first Xbox games I remember playing, because I was invited in middle school to a friend's house, and it was the glorious old days of local LAN parties. So we had the Xbox. Oh wait, no, it couldn't have been Halo 3. Would have had to have been one of the other ones, because Halo 3 was 360.
No, it would have been 2 then.
Yes, it would have had to have been 2. But it was back, and so we played that, and that was, I think, my first exposure to Halo was just the multiplayer and that with friends, and that was like, I remember that being one of my favorite gaming experiences because it's just like that. Because that's the quintessence of that game is, yes, the stories are they're good, and I think they're they're enjoyable narratives, but I think also part of it's definitely designed for the multiplayer component with friends, and it's that was a good old day that we don't get much these days, as we talked about, but
well, that's true.
That was definitely early in my experience, and then once I had the Xbox, I started getting other games like The Hobbit we mentioned in the previous one. That was an Xbox game. We had Medal of Honors, of course, for Xbox games, and those we played together.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when I started to get a little more serious. I probably would have called myself a gamer at that point because it was something that I actually would choose to do. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm done with homework. I could either watch Homestar Runner for 3 hours or play games, because that's how I used to spend my time in middle school.
Those that don't know, that's HTML.
If you don't know Homestar Runner, you had no childhood. Homestar Runner is great.
HTML is phasing. I mean,
it's
Flash is for sure.
Oh, Flash is already Flash is already pretty much gone these days.
That's what I'm saying. It's no longer.
But if I had to name a point, like you mentioned, when I started to really get into games more on the cultural level than just the entertainment, it was around high school, and I had an Xbox 360 by then, just because I was given an Xbox as a kid. That's, I think, how almost everyone got their assigned Xbox versus PlayStation teams, is just which one were you first given, and then you just keep going with the one you have.
Yeah.
So I got the Xbox 360, played the rest of the Halos, and I don't even remember. That was back in the day when we actually had a lot of games. But in high school was when I started to be more like on YouTube and stuff. So I started to see more people talking about games and sort of the artistic culture around it. And so it was things like back in the day, extra credits. I mean, if anyone who's been around YouTube in the gaming sphere probably knows the extra credits guys. Back when they had their old team, their team's changed a lot since, and I don't watch them as much anymore. But they used to talk a whole lot about like games as art because that was their whole thing. And so I decided one year I think it was for Christmas, I was like, you know what, I'm going to ask for a bunch of these like classic games, and I'm going to play them, and I'm going to finally be like, know what I'm talking about when it comes to game culture.
So the motivation for you was
kind
completely like...
because I was like, I want to know... It was similar to the film...
not that it was like not enjoyable. I was going to say it was more clinical. It was
I still wanted... It's not like I just wanted to study them. It's like I wanted to play them, but I wanted to have the experience, because it's like any famous story. It's like, famous movies are the same things. You want to watch them because they're famous stories, and you want to actually see them as they were. You don't just want to hear about them. You want to see them for yourself. So that was when I got like that year. I got Oblivion and BioShock and Fallout 3 and like Portal, because I also got, that was when I started getting into PC gaming as well.
Did you actually end up landing on what was your opinion on that? Because I
Portal?
never really got
Portal's
into Portal.
Great. I like Portal. I've played Portal both 1 and 2, and they're great. I mean, they're simple in terms of narrative. They're pretty light on their feet, but that's part of the reason they're good, is that they're they kick along, and they focus more on the comedy.
Sure.
Which is, of course, the whole point of them. They're puzzle games with comedic elements. But so, like, that was the year I was like, I got a whole bunch of those games, and that was when I started to go, I was a gamer, and I wanted to play stuff for the sake of, developing a degree of gaming savvy, as it were. And so that was kind of it, and that's sort of the path we've been on ever since, and that's how you end up with games like this, which I noticed I haven't been doing anything for the last little bit because I've been out of money, and no one's been getting me money. And, we're probably not going to do very well on this. But yeah, that path led me to here, where I'm now torturing poor forest dwellers to live in my, hierarchical pyramid.
And shaking down ents.
We're not shaking down. You're chopping down trees for industrialization. Are you opposed to progress? But anyways, now people can judge us knowing our history and where we came from. So admittedly, we weren't steeped in games from the youngest age like some people might have been. because the earliest age of games, like the early 90s games, kind of passed both of us by. I think. Because I wasn't really old enough to appreciate them.
And I think I was, but I wasn't specifically. I would say...
You need money, guys.
I was a part of the big Pokemon wave when it comes to gaming in that regard. So the 64, when Pokemon Stadium, that is still to this day a great game. I love that game.
Okay, see, I was never big into the Pokemons.
I'm not...
like I said, that kind of passed me by.
So that part was more... embarrassingly, actually, there was one particular friend that I recall where I would hang out with him and go over to his house, and at one point we were supposed to be asleep, and we were all kind of having like we're staying over at each other's houses in the living room, and I ended up literally staying up all night on his Game Boy. I want to say it was Advance.
Wait, without him? Like you weren't...
Oh yeah, it was all by myself.
I thought you were like, we all stayed up all night.
Oh no. I was like literally in the corner just playing a video game. So if that speaks to any sort of commitment to video games, I would say the other thing is I actually was a pretty big fan of the GoldenEye
that's a classic of that era.
Yeah, so I mean I did have some exposure. The difference is I was, call it what you will.
We're gonna get steamrolled. Once they start having these weird like masks, that's like their armor, so that means they're harder to kill. Although they're doing pretty well. And that is if they can hit them.
But I wouldn't call it like neglect or like, hey, I wasn't able to have stuff, but that was never a thing in my household. In fact, it was like, hey, you're not going to have a system. You can do that in other people's houses.
Wow,
so I was like, oh,
isn't that sad?
Isn't that sad?
It's day 10. I got no cash, and none of these people are getting me money, which means I'm not going to be able to... We're going to die.
So I was a closet gamer that had to figure out my way around.
Well, that perhaps... Well, there you go. That might explain how our gaming sensibilities are slightly more attuned, despite you having more time to have gotten exposed to them than I had. So you got it... Because I think we kind of got into games more seriously around the same time.
Right, exactly.
Although you were in college and I was in high school at that time.
Yeah.
So I had more free time to explore them in than you did.
This is true.
But yeah, well, since we've been on the topic, what's top 5's probably too many. What would you say top 3 games of all time?
Ooh.
Not like objectively, not like, Oscar type nominees, but I mean your personal favorites. Like you don't have to qualify them as being great.
Smash has to be on there somewhere. Smash 64
really?
It's a classic
you
can play with anybody
it's great
and everybody.
And it's fun, but it's not fun to play alone.
Well, no, of course not. But as you said, part of the whole gaming experience is playing alongside of other people.
Well, yeah. I don't necessarily want that to be the only way to play a game. Like, you can play Halo with other people and alone.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know about that.
Other games that I just feel like are really great.
I need cash, people. I might have to start a new game preemptively before we get steamrolled. Because if they're not going to give me cash, I'm not going to find it. I'm out of my loot.
I mean, I'm going to cheat the system slightly a little bit here and say that the Ezio series within the Assassin's Creed collection...
Well, yeah, you don't have to name all of the Assassin's Creed. Certainly because you shouldn't.
Well, no, but what I was saying is that particular... I'm going to count as one... kind of collection.
That might be a little loose.
Well, that's what I said. I'm playing fast and loose with the rules here.
Just to bring attention to the game since we've been ignoring it. Look at this pretty scene with the nice pink sunset, my nice water and horse and stones in the background. I like this game for its charm, and the gameplay's fun. My only problem is it's definitely very much it takes a lot of effort because you kind of have to keep going until you get lucky enough to have a map that helps you rather than harms you.
And then my third I don't know.
Your third eye?
No, my third I don't know. I do not know.
You're giving me time to think, so take your time.
See, you like I say a few, but now at this point it's probably been 5. About 5 or so years ago, you introduced me to the whole BioShock series.
I take credit for that.
And I really appreciated that series.
They're definitely on my list. I would say, it's hard when I say top 3s. Oh, money! You glorious people! You rock. Except not enough, but I won't hold it against you. Because this isn't going to be enough to help me do much, but you got 2 archers on either side. That's not going to be a lot. Bioshock definitely appears. The hard... since you did it, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to put Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite as one. Because they're both great. I guess if I really had to pick between the two of them, the experience I had with Bioshock Infinite, I think, was better for me.
Really? That's
because I was...
That could fall under the unpopular opinion camp.
I don't know too much. Bioshock Infinite was really popular.
It's popular, but I don't know.
To me, it's specifically because I think there's a degree to which I was more attuned to gaming at the time. Because when I first played Bioshock, I enjoyed it, but here's the thing. When I got Bioshock Infinite, I beat it in, I think, 2 days. Over the course of like 24 hours. And I mean like actual 24 hours. Like it was like a long weekend in which I did nothing but play that. And it was just like that. I was far more engrossed in it.
Yeah.
Just because I don't exactly know why, because it's not strictly the gameplay. I like the gameplay of I mean the gameplay is a little different because it's a little more fast paced than BioShock 1.
Well, and you can actually respond back too, rather than just kind of hiding and...
Well, once you get leveled up in BioShock, you can too. But it's
sure,
like,
but I don't
know what to do with my very scant cash. I guess trying to get some more people before we get steamrolled. And this is a new day. Okay, good. So that's if I had to pick between them. Although I think if I look back on them both, now having played them both, I just like BioShock 1 because I like the atmosphere of it a little more. I'm a little more into the... I don't know what you'd call it, the retro futuristic aesthetic, which I know Infinite has, but I also kind of like the underwater, like the aesthetic's very interesting, and to a degree, I even think I like the story more, like the philosophical parts of the plot. I think are interesting.
Yeah.
So I probably would pick one, but since I don't have to, since you used since you combined a lump of games into one, I'm gonna do it too. So BioShock's definitely up there. I'm big into the Zelda games, and that's gonna be. Admittedly, I'll admit I have not played a majority of them. In fact, I really almost all that it comes down to is I got super into Ocarina of Time. Like,
that is on an objective level one of the best games in history.
Yeah, I mean the case could certainly be made. I really got into it hardcore back, and that was in high school, because that was one of the games, we had that our whole lives with the N64. We got that, basically the same time we had the N64. But we never played it as much, because generally we played it all together when we were kids, and so we did things like Donkey Kong and the slightly more cartoonish games that were a little more fun to watch. Because Ocarina of Time is not as fun if you're not the person playing it. And we got our new guys. The problem is I don't have any money to give them tools, because what we really need is farmers. I don't have the money for that, but hopefully maybe if these people can give us some more cash. But Ocarina of Time, pretty much on its own, made me a fan of the Zelda games, and even other ones. I haven't played most of them, just because there's a lot of them.
I heard that
Breath of the Wild
Wind Waker one was a terrible...
Wind Waker was great.
I don't...
You're thinking of probably the games that followed Wind Waker. Which one
was the one that he was up in the...
that was Skyward Sword.
Oh, no, that one
Skyward
sucked.
Sword, no, it didn't. It doesn't deserve
trash.
as much hate as it gets. It's not my favorite, certainly. I also haven't played it. I did watch a Let's Play of it, because that was when I was heavily into Zelda, so I watched that one again thoroughly. I have played through, in terms of ones I've beaten, sadly, is only Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess.
Huh.
Those are the ones I've beaten. I played Majora's Mask pretty extensively with my cousin. This is the same cousin. Every time we mention our cousin, it's the same one we've both played games with. But he had that, and we played it. I don't think I beat it, but that was when I played that. I had a handheld edition of Link to the Past, which I don't know where it is. I wish I did, because I got pretty far into that. Oh no! Okay, I needed you to survive. Ooh! Thank heavens. Okay, so they got their bows back. They didn't actually steal them. But the problem is I have $1. with which to do nothing. I didn't beat Link to the Past, sadly, and I don't think I've played any of those. So admittedly, I'm more of a spiritual fan, I guess, than an experienced fan, because I really do love them. I mean, I love Ocarina of Time, and I really like Twilight Princess, too. And my appreciation for those spans pretty much for the whole series, because I've definitely followed the lore of all of them, even though I haven't been able to play them myself. So that's definitely up there. I've been waffling a lot. I need a third one. I don't know, to be honest. They might be the Halos. They might be the lower down. They might be number 3. Because they were a big... I liked the Halos a lot, too. They, as I said, they were one of my early nostalgic experiences in gaming. So that's probably got to be... Yeah, I'm probably going to give it there. Because that was... I remember back... Because when I was really getting into the Halos was the time when, like, the Modern Warfares were well and truly on their... hitting their stride. And... the Gears of War games had recently come out, or like the most recent one. I think it was like Gears of War 3. And I remember being in a GameStop. I forget what I was there for. But there was a group of kids all talking to each other, and they were teasing this one guy because he wasn't into Gears of War. And he was like, I'm more into Halo. And they were all like, oh, boo. And I was like, okay, well, solidarity, bro. I'm with you. I remember that. That was that was just one of my early experiences, so it's got to be Halo there.
So side commentary, if you're one of those gamers
who trashes other people's opinions, then again, I've been trashing yours, so
you've become the very gamers you hated. No.
Well,
I think there are games that are objectively not great. I think that a fair critique could be leveled against the Kingdom Hearts games as far as their complexity, that much for sure, as far as plot. But I'm saying anytime you just are on a pop culture level deciding or allowing pop culture to dictate your gameplay, let me just tell you, you're probably not going to be experiencing some of the greats.
Well, yeah. Well, then again, the reason I picked some of the games that I picked, well, I suppose it wasn't like the kids at my school. I mean, it was still pop culture because it was like people on YouTube.
Right.
But, so I guess I can't say that it wasn't, but it wasn't like, people in my school were like, you have to play these games, and so I did. I heard people talking about games on YouTube and was like, oh, those sound fun. I want to give those a try since they're reviewed as so highly. So there you go. We've now established you can critique us for our favorites. You can tell us that they suck inevitably because someone will. But we can also tell you to kindly go hang. But that's an expression. It's an expression. Anyways, so there you go. All is revealed. That's our sort of experience. But you got any other? I think what other topics did we have? I think that was one of the big one. Figured we might hit on. Perhaps a culture corner or some recent news.
I was thinking unpopular opinion. That would be fun.
Unpopular opinion of what variety?
I don't know.
You just want to stir up some controversy?
Yeah, I just feel like stirring up some things.
Let's
go
money.
Movies.
Movies.
Unpopular opinions on movies.
Well, we've already discussed our except not unpopular opinions on the Hobbit movies. We didn't really get into the Star Wars because we brought it up in the Halo, the sci-fi. Our broader sci-fi discussion. But we didn't actually talk... I mean, we talked a bit about sort of how... I suppose we revealed our hand without exactly playing it. Because we talked about how, the news of George Lucas directing a new series didn't thrill us as much as it might have, which might suggest that the recent Star Wars developments, we'll call them, have been underwhelming, to say the least, for us.
Well,
I suppose that's perhaps, I mean, again, that may not be that unpopular, but then again, who knows these days?
Well, yeah,
I'm just going to wander around until someone gives me some cash. We joke that I'm being aggressive toward these people, but I actually have no means of getting money out of them. I just take it from them when they have it. I can't actually force them to get it for me.
That sounds very much the way that some fascist dictator would
Well-
defend himself. I'm not actually taking it. I just, the minute they have it, I remove it from them.
Gone.
It's gone.
So yes, Star Wars unpopular opinion. Whether or not it's unpopular, I don't know. I suppose it's unpopular because, on the one hand, the one thing that I know is unpopular to a degree is we're both prequel fans.
Yeah, and
Which
there's
is not.
it's almost like
there's definitely a crowd for those, so it's not like we're alone in that. But I imagine it's a minority of viewers, even if it's a large minority.
Well, I would speculate that the people that have a problem with the prequels are probably those that were.
I think they were kids
of the
when the
original
originals
era.
came out.
Exactly.
Yeah, they were kids, and we were
I was
mostly
about to
kids.
say. So the argument then stands that those people that are kids nowadays, as the Star Wars movies have come
we're
out,
gonna hate, and there's been lots of that online.
we've
People
become what we used.
You've become the very thing you swore to destroy. That's been a meme all around for the people who bash the sequels. When you're going, well, we got ours bashed when we were kids. I guess we're just carrying on the tradition. But yeah, so well, it's not a argument without criticism or without grounding.
Yeah,
Because
credibility.
I won't defend the prequels as being perfect, because they most certainly aren't. They are definitely have their flaws.
They were,
And the
but
sequels do too, and that's where you go, how can I claim
No.
one is better than the other? Because
here's
they're both
how.
flawed.
Objectively, though, on a cinematic level, they were produced far more up to par, I believe.
Well,
with-
because George was still involved.
exactly.
And whether or not you like his writing, he had in his head the conception of how the world should be.
correct.
And so even if you think the writing was stilted, because sometimes it is, the world feels it's well, I was going to say it's consistent, but it is somewhat different than the originals. But it's, for some reason, I still feel like it feels a little more genuine. It feels like what he wanted, because it was. And whether or not other people like that is their own prerogative. Did you guys get no money? This is going to be the most boring playthrough. I'm not even hardly getting anything done.
Just riding back and forth like Paul Revere.
Well, yeah, the demons are coming, and we're all going to die.
The demons are coming.
Because there's no way of getting money. I wish you could get money from these
one
guys by
torch
killing
if
them.
by right, two torch if by left. They all got masks.
Yeah, so we're gonna get our
Gonna get
steamrolled
your
again.
Rear ends handed to
Here
you
it
on a
comes,
platter.
steamroller. So yeah, we've had an unlucky run, but that's now we're gonna get sandwiched. I'm getting out of here. Like a true despot, I leave in the moment of greatest trial. Bye, I'm leaving into the woods. Hey, bye-bye. They're leaving now. Do I have a kingdom left to govern? I might not. I got these guys. These hammer and bow salesmen, and not a single citizen. Every one of them's been corrupted. I can't. We're just going to have to start over. I'm not going to be able to... There's nothing I can do with that, because now I don't even have the means of getting money. Well... This is the game, though, so I suppose we're at least showing it off for what it is. It's not disingenuous. It's definitely got its roguelite elements. But yeah, I feel like there's a degree to which the sequel trilogy did not respect the originals.
Well, you know why? Disney.
Well, yeah.
And that's a whole nother soapbox we can get
well,
on.
yes, we could, but it's just because... as much as they're flawed, you get the sense that George was doing what he wanted with the prequels.
Right.
Like oh my goodness. Wait, was this a camp? Is
What?
this a camp going to be like right next to our camp, like our house? Because normally we're not that. Normally this little ghosty person isn't that far away. So dude, if that camp is right by the kingdom, that'll be brilliant, because that means we can get people a lot easier because they're not as far away. Oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to save this game for when I'm playing on my own later. You still get the impression that George cared, because he did, of course. It was his thing, and you might say that he cared too much, or that he had some weird opinions, and maybe he did. That's, the writing I won't quibble over, because I recognize it as its faults, but I still think it's better than some people give it credit.
Right.
That said, I don't feel like Disney did. I feel like Disney... they tried to distance themselves from the prequels because of their reputation, which is understandable to a degree, but it's also like, come on, you bought this stuff. You kind of have to...
Yeah, it's an understanding business move, because I think they may even have made the comment that they would have been damned if they did and damned if they didn't. I mean, it's kind of like...
Yeah, there's a degree.
Because if they would have followed too closely, they would have gone, well, why are you even making these movies? They're unnecessary and just, trivial. And then the fact that they tried to branch out and do their own thing is like, well, why are you making these movies? You're not even staying true to the original.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like...
Well, it's the eternal griping of fans We complain when things are too similar and then complain when they're too different, but
there is something to be said about the fact that Disney is a bit of a...
They've become a degree of milkers these days.
Well, it's more than milkers. They're kind of bullies. As far as companies wise goes. They come in, but they come in and they say, we're gonna buy out your franchise and now we're gonna dictate what's going on. Emphasis on the former half that I was about to say. And then they don't. You're right. I don't think they value the spiritual.
Here's the thing. I don't know that this is true, but I do believe that what happened when they bought Marvel was they bought it and left it alone. I think the guy who was head of Marvel before they bought it stayed head of Marvel. Yeah. I don't think he was head of Marvel. I don't think he owned the company. I'm talking whoever actually
the cinematic side.
I think whoever's actually the CEO of Marvel Studios stayed the CEO of Marvel Studios. Whereas the fact that I don't know if this was part of the contract or what, but the fact that they I don't know if they ousted George or if he left. But the fact that they replaced him once they bought Lucasfilm kind of feels a little like
they wanted him to not.
Yeah, they wanted him out because of, I guess, his reputation as being a little, certainly auteur could be the word, at the very least. I don't know that happened. Maybe he stepped down, but I haven't. I suppose I should have, looked it up before, but I wasn't exactly sure we would get to this. But yeah, it feels like there's not as much respect and there's not as much care for it. But for example, Rogue One was a great movie. Yeah. I liked Rogue One a lot because
as a standalone.
Yeah, because it was made by a person who liked the movies, who grew up with them was a fan of them as a kid, and really, you can tell that he cared because he wanted to make the best Star Wars movie he could. Whereas I felt like Disney just wanted to make money from them.
Yeah.
And I understand like J.J. Abrams and stuff was evidently a fan too, but it doesn't feel like it, to be honest. Because it doesn't feel like he had any respect for it. It doesn't feel like he wanted to improve upon it. He just wanted to make money off of it.
Right.
Whereas, I forget the guy's name because it was a fairly new director who did Rogue One. But, I mean, he did a great job because he cared and he really, there's passion. And you can sense that in a work.
Right.
And you can also sense when it's gone.
I don't think budget can be used as an excuse, not just strictly because it's Disney,
Certainly
but I'm saying no.
Because George, for the prequels, they had all the budget he needed. He was as rich as.
But what I'm saying
is, by then,
outside of I'm saying on a more broad sense, there are movies that are like they didn't have the right budget or they didn't put this.
Well, there's there's big budget movies that flop and small movies that succeed. So,
exactly, a lot of it has to do with the care and intentionality in which you
passion.
approach.
You can always tell passion when it's present. It's always palpable.
Yeah.
And when it isn't, it usually isn't. So there you go. So
when
that's we meant to get to that with the Halo video.
When it's not, it won't.
Yeah, when it is, it isn't. And corn is corn, and AIDS is AIDS. There's a reference. If you get that reference, you'll be welcome here because that's exactly the kind of people we need. People who get that reference. Perhaps a few light topics with the few minutes we got left. You got any culture of the week? I know you've been more busy than I have.
Ooh, the only culture of the week I've seen is scholastic culture.
Well, after the Halo video, and we discussed some sci-fi stuff, I decided to rectify my lack. And so I finally watched Alien.
Huh.
Because it was one that had been on my list forever. Now, you seem to be more down on the film.
Already. I didn't say I was down on the film.
You kind of acted as if you were like, I don't like it as a movie.
Well,
I want to be able to build here.
I feel like in the same... You have to go into it knowing that it's one of those...
It's definitely...
Those classic 80s, I'm going to...
Well, it's technically 70s, and you can feel it.
But I mean...
It's definitely slow, because it was in that age of movies when movies could be... where they were a little more slow and contemplative.
Well, not just slow, but I mean, once it got into the action, it was like, now, it's a...
I want to build a wall here, thanks, thank you.
Sigourney Weaver became that classic, she's the...
Well, not until everyone else was dead. It wasn't like she was just suddenly gifted. What would you do if you were suddenly the commander of a ship of mostly dead people? You'd have to. There's a degree to which she's often been held up as one of the best examples of female writing, partially because they don't make a big deal about her being a female. One of my favorite.
Well, that is true.
One of my favorite commentaries on it is that she, responded the way a person would, and so you don't have to be a female to respond to feel resonance with her,
right?
Because you go, well, yeah, I mean, there's a degree to which the strong female character, but the problem is you can't make a strong female character. You can only make a character who is incidentally female and have them be strong.
Right.
You can't do all three as one. They have to be each, and so that's
what your meaning is that she was so strong that
she's
she was female.
Well, because it's like she dealt with the situation as she had to, and as anyone would have to in that happenstance. And the fact that she's a woman is it's incidental to her character. The film would have worked without it, but the fact that she isn't is
I don't know that
it's the fact that they don't clobber you around the head with, oh, she's a woman and she's powerful. See,
exactly.
Yeah,
but I don't know that I ever downplayed or suggested the movie was bad. I don't know that it was bad.
You just said you didn't. I think you just said you didn't like it much.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm gonna go recruit people.
I can take it or
this
leave
is
it.
Wonderful that people are this close. I need to actually do well in this game so I can save this for later. So yeah, I watched that because I thought I finally would, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it's certainly. I don't think it's still my favorite because it's definitely of an era. It's definitely slower.
I think that's what bothered me the most, probably.
But I don't mind an occasional slow movie, and I actually think the effects are great. I mean, it's famous for that.
Right.
It's some really interesting special effects, and I guess technically it's one of my first horror movie experiences, although not.
You couldn't really it's
more. It's more of a
thriller.
Yeah, that's probably the right. I mean, it's classified as a horror, but that's probably the subgenre of horror. Because the thing about me, I'm not. It's not that I'm like squeamish. Well, okay, squeamish isn't the right word. It's not that I'm opposed to like scary movies or intense stuff.
Yeah.
It's that generally a lot of horror movies are more in the gore and the torture porn aspect. Like,
right.
Like, and I'm not into that.
And
yeah, like,
it's
like that stuff's. I'm not into that just because I'm like, I don't want to feel like I have to take a shower after I watch this. If it's just intense and scary. And, I mean, there's a degree of gore in Alien, but not a lot.
It's not
a lot,
it's not
really.
The point of the movie.
Yeah, and it doesn't...
It is.
Yeah, in some movies, it's like, here, watch this excruciating scene. Don't you feel squeamish? And I'm like,
don't look away.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want that. And this doesn't do that. It doesn't draw it out.
No, it doesn't.
So, yeah, I enjoyed it. It's not probably... It certainly wouldn't be my favorite, but now that I've seen it, I'm glad, to have the cultural... Since it was such a big movie of its time.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? That was... I've watched a fair few movies in the sense from the last times we've recorded, but they don't all fit thematically. So I'm not sure if I can't really tie the next one in, but I watched Kingdom of Heaven, which is on a very different spectrum. It's the Ridley Scott... Oh, well, I suppose there's one tying theme. See? Segue. It's also another Ridley Scott movie. But it's about the Crusades, and it's again, a somewhat slow movie, but again, if you're a history person like I am,
yeah,
it's palatable. And of course, I should mention I watched the director's cut because that is apparently very universally established to be the better one. It's like 3 hours long, so I definitely had to be in the mood to watch it. But now that I have, I'm like, I enjoyed it. It's interesting. I mean, the criticism I often hear is that it's Orlando Bloom as the main character, who's a little lacking at times. But there's other interesting characters. I actually found the portrayal of King Baldwin to be pretty fascinating.
Oh, that's
just because he's the leper king and he's wearing his like robes and mask the whole time, which I don't think is historical, but it does work as a sort of aesthetic and sort of setting the character. It definitely adds a degree of like bizarreness.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting movie. If you're a history buff, then you probably will be able to stomach the 3 hours, although I'd recommend... I watched it while having dinner, so at least I had something to do while I was watching it, because there's definitely some slower periods, but it's good.
Sadly, I have been devoid of
Yes, you're still in the
Do you have
academic
any cultural
wormhole.
inclinations?
You're in the academic wormhole. I am glad to be out of it.
Yeah.
Well, we could either we could save our news topics for another day, or we could hit them now briefly.
News.
You had the one about the since we're bashing Disney, we could bash Disney some more with the wasn't it the Swiss Family Robinson nonsense?
Oh, it was more than that. So Disney just essentially released a thing regarding Disney Plus, which, I understand it's their platform; they can do whatever they like with it. But essentially, it removed from the platform or made it more difficult to actual view whatever they decide to actually do. Quite a few movies that are, I would argue, they're kind of bread and butter classics.
I don't know that I'd call Swiss Family
No.
Robinson a
It was
classic,
more than that, though. Like, it was like Peter Pan they're removing and some of those
I
things.
haven't heard they were
like,
moving. I thought they just had the title disclaimer saying this film's old and racist.
No, see, it's more than that now. They're, like, removing it from the kids' watch area and they're putting it in the, like, adults' film watch area.
Okay,
or
that's a
something
little
like that.
silly.
And I'm like, what? And their only argument, so it was like Dumbo and some of the other. So I'll start with this. It's if you want to make an argument or level a claim that there's some concern with, for instance, the Dumbo situation with the quartet, that they were all blackface.
The Crow Quartet.
Right, exactly. You go, okay, you may have an argument there that
I'll grant that.
And it's here's the thing. You can't blame him. It was 1930.
Yeah, that's pretty.
But I mean, at the same time, I understand that that's a slightly, more sensitive topic.
I don't have an issue with because they did the title. I remember hearing about when they put like the disclaimers on a lot of videos. That was a while back. That I don't have as much an issue with because I think as long as you're being historically conscious,
right?
Because you can say, hey, there's no need to censor it completely. But I don't think. I mean, as much as I think. I'll admit that I don't know that I think it's so grave that it needed a disclaimer to go, oh, this movie's watch out because it's literally like if you get offended by this, it's pretty minor in terms of the actual plot,
right?
And it's not even that heavy on the illusion, really. I mean, it's but
and then they took it. But
I'll grant you as long as you say, hey, for historical purpose, this. Remember that it was in 1930,
right? So
take that as you will. That I don't mind that disclaimer, but if they're going to start hiding it, that's a little silly.
Well, and for me, even I go, that's a limit where I go. I understand your argument. I meant I'd agree with it, but I understand your argument.
Yeah.
The issue I take is when they start saying, like in Peter Pan, well, we can't have it's a misportrayal
But once again, what was that like 1950?
Well, but here's the thing. Even with that, I go, okay, so you're removing simply because of the use of the term Redskins and this idea
that the portrayal as well is the...
Well, but it's not the just portrayal was a historical perspective. It may not be, like, the only perspective that there is. And it's a little tropey, but so is a lot of stuff. I mean, you can't get away from trope. I mean, there's a reason it's animation, for goodness sake.
Well, yes. And I'll agree with you there.
But then they took it a step further to say, and this was Swiss Family Robinson, and this is where we really...
this one's the most absurd. Yes. The other two we could pass on. This one's silly.
It was essentially... In the Swiss Family Robinson, they said that they had to remove it from the kids' area because
I heard that they removed it completely. Is that not what they did?
I don't remember. But the bottom line is it was like... They removed it because it overcast or it miscast the representation of pirates as foreign menace or something like that. And it said with
overly barbarous.
Overly barbarous.
And here's the thing.
With like makeup and extreme kind of like clothing
and they were evidently supposed to be like they were all portrayed as Asian.
Which is, first of all, not accurate necessarily.
Well, honestly, I don't even know the last time I saw that movie. And I don't even know if I saw it all the way through. Because I would have been very young when that was a thing I would even care about. But here's the thing. If you want to put a disclaimer saying, hey, this is an ahistorical depiction of pirates because most pirates weren't this barbaric, I'm like, I'd be all about that because that's true. But that's not the reason. It's because they're Asian. Well, had they been a bunch of white guys who were barbaric, they probably wouldn't have cared.
Well, it's more than just.
But there's the thing: there were Asian pirates, there were white pirates, there were Hispanic pirates, there were African pirates,
fairly famous ones too.
Yeah, it's like there were pirates from every creed and color. It's not like only the Asian pirates were barbarous.
It's like they were... So here's my issue with it, and I said this because I made this statement as far as what my particular concern was, is it's one thing to begin saying, well, let's be sensitive to kind of some of the cultural and racial tensions and underpinnings that are going on within, history. It's another thing entirely to, as you've already highlighted, it's another thing entirely to delete it or to somehow censor it. Because censoring censoring history, always a bad idea.
Well, and always the path taken by people about to do some messed up things.
Right. And then the other thing is, I would say, you cheapen your argument when you start straining at gnats. When you stop focusing on the macro level issue and you start going, they had this particular face that made it look like a trope. It's like, well, okay. It's going to be, of course. They have to make it obvious.
Well, yeah. That was the one that I found really absurd because it's just I don't even know what to call it. It's just it seems misguided at the very least. And speaking of misguided, the next topic, which will probably have to be the last one, similar deal, but it restored a bit of faith in humanity after hearing this nonsense. I saw a news article that first made me concerned, and it said, should Disney remove Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean ride? Because, of course, Johnny Depp's had a bit of a reputational snag, we'll call it, since we said just...
I have some probably unpopular, or maybe even...
I admit I don't know enough about it, so I won't even bother to comment on it. I understand that he may or may not have done questionable things, but then again, who in Hollywood hasn't?
Yeah.
And I would wager Jack Sparrow as a character is far worse a person than Johnny Depp is as a real person.
Yeah.
So, but I read that and I thought, oh no, of course, because they've already taken Johnny Depp out of Pirates 6, which is a ludicrous move. They should just cancel the movie if you ask me.
Yeah.
But I was like, so help me, this will be stupid. And then I saw, thankfully, there was actually like a bit of polling, and there was a pretty wide minority, or majority rather, of like 70% people saying no. Because the reasoning is, it's part of the ride, and it's not Johnny Depp, it's Jack Sparrow because it's a wax figure.
Right.
Like, normally you can't dissociate the actor and the character that well, but when the actor is not present, and it's just the character in a form of an animatronic, it's like, well then he's not even Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
It doesn't even look that much like Johnny Depp because it's an animatronic in makeup. Yeah. So... that's silly to say because this actor played this character, we can't have the character when the character didn't do any of the things the actor has been accused of doing. That to me was silly, but it heartened me to see that there was enough people that went no, because there was enough people with common sense that you go, we don't need to. That doesn't. What does that do? All it does is ruin the Pirates ride. It doesn't rectify anything that's been done.
Exactly. And how does that make anybody feel better about?
Well, yeah, I don't think
lives?
it wouldn't. And so I was that bit of after learning that Disney's doing some wacky things. At least we know that there are still a few people in the world who aren't wholly off their rockers. But as I have this wad full of cash and nothing to do with it, and I've somewhat failed at being a leader, we'll wait out this night until it passes, and we'll have to call it at that. But don't you agree it's a lovely little charming? Perhaps you wouldn't be as engaged because you're not playing with it, but
well,
does the idea appeal? Are you at all into the Civilization type games?
No, that's the difference.
See, I am, but I am not that into them because I struggle with some of the third person RTS strategy where it's like you're looking at it from a map.
That's my
this I like because
it's
I like this because it's close up, you get to interact, and it's just pretty for a pixel art game, which is new to me. But there you go. So, what's a proper ending for ye olde English? God save ye, bangers and mash, toodaloo. Now we're just going Cockney.
Doodle pip.